took 3 of them to drag him up the hill. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and dropped him into bed. I got up and my water had broken. Look at this, he says. You wet your bed. When we got to the hospital, I was joking around saying maybe he's the one that needs the wheelchair. Oh yeah, this one is for him because he looks so bad.
Stories with Vavo. Stories with Vavo. Listen to them all. We got those stories with Vavo. She was born in Rotterdam, and her stories are the best of all. And she'll never stop talking.
Well, welcome back to Stories with Vavo. This is Phil Pancho. I'm here with my lovely mother, Sophia Pancho. And we have started to look into our family situation, and as our family starts to grow and the adventures that came of it. We heard a little bit about Puerto Rico last time, and there was lots of parties and things there. So, did you meet anybody else there? Like, was there anybody that you still keep in contact with there, or
not still? Kept in touch with a few people for a while, and that's a couple of things that I wanted to mention is because when we were rented an apartment, which was located over a pizza parlor, and the students from the nearby university used to flock to that pizza parlor all the time. And once they were through school, it was like their gathering place. Mm-hmm. And as they're coming from the parking lot to the pizza parlor, we could see them through our windows in our living room. And Mark at the time was like 2 years, well, he was 2 when we moved there. He was 2 in January, and we went there in April. And he would stand behind the window, and he remembered the tune from the Beatles. And a couple of girls were walking from the car, and he's standing behind the window going, I love you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And showman even then, you know. And the girls looked up and just were, oh my goodness, they were so enthralled with him. And they kept waving us to come down and meet him. So I said, you know, I signed that I couldn't, but I signed for them to come up if they felt like it. So they didn't that first time, but they came back again another time. Darn if he didn't spot him and start again singing to him. So they did come up, and they were the nicest girls. I mean, you know, they were young women. They were in university, but they spoke English quite well. And because I was there alone all the time with the 2 babies, because Dad was in school, they decided, they're going to adopt me. They took me for rides. They had car, took me with the boys. And this day they said, we're going to the hotel pool and Mark can swim. So I said, you can go there? She said, sure. And we went in, me just like lamb led to slaughter. I go with them. They know what they're doing, right? So I'm sitting on the deck looking at them. Mark is running back and forth, swimming, and some young man, well, not that young, he was older than me for sure, but came over and wanted to know could he buy me a drink. I said, well, I'm sitting there with Danny on my lap. What could he think? He just wanted to be nice and buy me a drink. I said, thank you very much.
Oh, no.
I had a pop or something. And we chatted a little bit. I told him we were from Bermuda, so he probably thought I was a guest. But when we were leaving, I said, well, of course I'm going to ask him when we're leaving. I said, so how come you can come to this place and swim? Is it a membership or something? She said, no, you just walk in. They don't know who you are. And she said, for sure, you tourist.
Yeah.
And that's
Wow.
how they do it, right?
That's-
Nerves of steel.
My
Well, I
goodness.
didn't do that again.
Just walk in like you own it, right?
Yeah. And then they used to come and, oh my goodness, if I had dishes to be picked up and washed, they'd pitch right in, get
Really?
me out, go for a ride. Nice,
Wow.
nice women.
Oh, cool.
And
But living on top of a pizza place,
yeah,
you were either never hungry or always hungry. With that smell, it must have,
it really, you get over it.
yeah.
Yeah, you just don't think about, once you got over the first whiffs of it, you always wanted to go for pizza. And then also on that, in the same, like this was an apartment building, but it only had like, it would be probably 6 apartments. The 2 bottom floor was a pizza parlor and a regular residential thing. But anyway, we were living above another lady whose little granddaughter was Sarita. And she'd have a friend who would come to the parking lot and yell up at her, Sarita, puedes bajar? That means, Sarita, can you come down? Mark learned that, so he stood at the window and he'd yell out.
Sarita.
But next to them was a Mexican family, and that was Mark's first girlfriend.
Ooh,
Her name was Gabriela.
Gabriel. Gabriella.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, she was Gabriela. We called her Gabby, and her dad was in the same school with Grandpa, and but her mom Isabel was a lovely person, but she didn't know English, so she and I made a deal. I was going to teach her English while she's teaching me Spanish, but I understood her fine because of my Portuguese. But we had a good time, and then those Mexicans, they would get together, sit on a tiny little porch outside, and sing. Oh, what heavenly voices. And my favorite was Cuckoo. They sang that all the time in such harmony. It just made you feel wonderful. But anything like that, nobody bothered with TV watching.
No.
They were, sitting outdoors, as little space as it was still really nice. And so we had those. And the other thing I wanted to remember was about when we went for almost every day. It was so hot there, we didn't have air conditioning. And we would walk to about halfway between our apartment and Grandpa's school was a Sears department store. So I would put Danny in the buggy, and Mark always had a harness on because I was terrified that he'd get away from me and get into the road. They drove like maniacs there. And then I'd walk to that Sears department store, about 20-minute walk, and Mark would get a ride on the horse. They had one of these mechanical little horses in the lobby.
Oh, yeah.
So you put in a dime and he'd get like a minute or 2 of riding on it. So he was thrilled to go there. And Mark was always a good little walker. Well, he didn't have any way to complain about it. He just went. And so then Dad knew where we were. On his way home, he would peek in if we weren't standing outside. And he'd pick us up, and we all walked together from there back home. That was Mark's exciting adventure, going to ride in that little horse.
So now in Puerto Rico, like I know, like a lot of times you go to the Dominican, your money goes a lot further. You go to Mexico, your money goes a lot further.
Yeah, things were cheaper there, but only if you went to their market, for instance, with the food. And my neighbor, who was the owner of the apartment's daughter, she took me with her because she drove. She took me to the market with her. And, of course, they had all their fruits and vegetables and stuff, and the meat was hanging with the flies all over it on the hooks, and it just didn't turn me on. And not only that, but the market was quite a distance away, and the regular grocery store stocked a lot of what I was used to buying, and things in tins instead of hanging in the fresh air and all that. So if you shopped in the market, I would say it was at least half the price of what you paid in the regular grocery store.
You just
Because I paid the difference, because in the end, if I had to pay a taxi to take me to
Right.
market and then carrying two little people. So what they did for me, I could get all my stuff and pay for it, and sometime later in the day, somebody would deliver it to my door.
okay.
And I just went with always Danny in the buggy and Mark walking beside me. But
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like you wouldn't have bothered getting a vehicle for the time you were there.
Oh,
You said the
no.
girls picked you up anyway. Like
yeah,
when
well,
they
that
took you
was
on that
occasional
couple
treats,
times,
yeah.
yeah.
But we did have access to a vehicle, and that was at the time we were in Puerto Rico. It was when the Cubans were fleeing Cuba from fleeing Castro.
Okay.
And some of them were living in our little complex there. And the one lady told me, well, they have a second car. Her husband was working, and she used to be they were aristocrats in Cuba, but she had nothing in Puerto Rico. When they left, they took what they could, but they did manage that she had a second vehicle, and she cooked for her children. She never cooked in her life. She had maids to do everything for her, but when they fled to Puerto Rico, she had to be the mother and the house cleaner and everything. They had two children, and she made polenta all the time for their lunch. So she loaned us her car, and she said, "Oh, just give her a little bit to help her with gas." And I don't really, somehow $10 sticks in my mind that we would give to her for using the car Saturday and Sunday. And one time we were going to visit, Grandpa had a cousin living in Ramey Air Force Base. Her husband was with the American Air Force. And it was about 3 hours drive from where we were living. And we decided we'd go take the little car and go up to visit. And we got halfway there, and there was this big roadblock. And we could line up, and we were just watching cars go by. And I said to Dad, "Do we have any kind of documents in this car?" Like, we didn't even know the people's name.
Really?
I knew her first name, Asung Song, but I didn't know what her last name was. And he looked in the glove compartment. There was nothing there.
papers, yeah.
No license, nothing. And I said, "Okay, we're dead. We're dead.
Yeah,
We're
because you can't
going
turn
up."
around now.
Can't turn
No.
around,
Yeah.
and it was a narrow highway at that point too. So as we're going along, and people are being pulled aside, and you could see the men questioning and fingers waving in the air, and oh my goodness, here is Mark and Danny fast asleep on the back seat of the car, not a thing. Well, what would they know anyway? But as we got up, the guy in front of us, he talked the longest time, and all of a sudden he put the barrier down, let everybody go.
What?
Now tell me
That
our
wonderful.
guardian angel wasn't looking after us.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
we just about had a bad reaction to that.
Wow.
But were we ever lucky? So after that, we made sure we knew their names and the phone number and everything. We knew nothing about them.
Yeah.
Nothing at all, and not a thought in our head about having to prove we didn't steal that car.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, Ramey Air Force Base was lovely because as residents there, they had access to the commissary and the restaurant and all this stuff, and they ate for next to nothing as far as pricing food and stuff goes. But yeah, the boys enjoyed, or Mark did, enjoyed his little cousins. So
So that's 1964 is when you guys were there. How long did you stay
Yeah.
again?
we stayed, was like 9.5 months.
Okay,
Well,
so it probably took you into like January.
no, I'm saying 9.5 months. It wasn't, because when we went back to Bermuda, it was like the end of October, and we were there from April.
Yeah, but Dad went
Mid-April,
first.
but Dad
Dad went
was
first,
there
yeah,
for
yeah,
a
okay.
for a month with the school. He did a lot of his. He did one of his courses there in Spanish. The teacher didn't know any English, and he taught the course in Spanish. But he took it, and when we got back to Bermuda, of course, I just started working again, and Amy was looking after Danny and Mark. And the one day I just remembered about us going to work and not a thought about bad weather or anything. All of a sudden, there's a notice on the radio, storm headed right for Bermuda. And everybody was calling everybody, the businesses and all, go home, because the storm was supposed to hit right dead on. And it did. We went, by the time Dad picked me up from work and we went and got the boys at Amy's house, we drove home right in the center of the eye of the storm. It was the most beautiful weather you could ever imagine. Beautiful sunshine, peace, not a breeze, nothing. It was just so gorgeous to think we were in the center of the storm. And when we got up to our house, which had the big double door overlooking the ocean, man, you could see all of a sudden the winds changed and that ocean started to churn, and Grandpa was so scared that the frame of that door was going to bust through that he propped up a couch up against the frame.
Wow.
And he was standing behind it. Now, supposing it had bust through, there he
gone right
was
through 'em.
standing right
Yeah.
holding the couch up against the frame of the door. That was scary. Thank goodness it didn't last long. But I'll never forget the peacefulness, the beauty of
in the
the
eye.
weather right there. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because, like, you think like how far in advance they're predicting these things now, where you just didn't have that.
Not that
technology.
much,
Yeah.
no. And this one, I don't know if it was
So
a
if you're
fluke.
relying on radar,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if satellite weather was a big thing then.
Not, I
know,
don't
it could have
think
been.
so. We
But-
knew storms were coming,
Yeah.
but I don't remember how it was that we knew it.
Crazy.
But we always had time to board up the house and get ready for a storm.
Yeah.
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 So, well, Danny was probably around 2.5 or so when I was still working and hated every minute of it. In the morning, having to hustle out of the house. And there was always such a rush. Mark had this penchant for sneaking off to the neighbor's house, and because they had a little boy that he would play with. And so many a time when I finally caught up with him, I spanked him all the way home.
Oh.
You don't go over there, you don't go over there. And he would just truck along, didn't even bother crying or anything. You know how hard I was spanking him. So anyhow,
It's gonna get one of these.
yeah, around that time frame, we found out I'm pregnant. So this is when Kevin's going to come along. And the whole plan of our house that we could transform the carport into a third bedroom never happened because there were complications with where the pit was built and different things. So I don't know who even found, I think it was Norman's brother, who's a builder. He found this lot of land, which we decided to buy and build our own house on it.
And where
That
was
was
it?
on Clay Estates.
That's the Clay Estates
Yeah,
house?
that's the
Okay.
house we built. And then on the way to work the one day, I was rushing, putting, at that point, Grandpa decided we needed a new car. And I'm really
It started
not,
that early?
yeah, and I'm really not happy about that. And I was trying to rush it and have a load of wash going before I left home in the morning. Mark's disappeared. I'm running off and I got him back home. And just as I'm going to get my purse and everything, I realized what happened to Danny? And I vaguely remembered hearing this, from Danny when I was in the kitchen doing, our washer was right in the kitchen. And when I decided to go see what the noise was about, Danny was on the floor choking to death. He must have been eating a cookie and it was lodged in his throat. And when I saw him, his eyes were bugging out of his face.
Oh my gosh.
And he was turning blue. I turned him upside down. I did everything wrong, but I got the cookie out and he was okay. And that did it for me. I said, if I wasn't rushing, trying to get to work, I would have gone right away when I first
You
heard,
heard him.
ah,
Yeah.
and I went into work and quit.
Oh,
That was that. Besides the fact that I'm not going to be working to get a new car. I was working to help make ends meet. But when the thing became getting a new car, that's it. I quit. Didn't want to work anymore. And well, I took them all by surprise. And my boss was very upset about it. I was hard as nails and wasn't budging for anybody. I'm just going to be taking care of my children and that's it. So in that year was when we built the house up on Clay Estates. And in between that, Dad was supposed to go for another training somewhere, which actually didn't work out, so we didn't get to go away. And Granny offered us, while we were building the house on Clay Estates, we had a chance to get rid of ours that we were living in. And so the time in between, we needed like 2 or 3 more months. She said, well, I'm due to go and visit Audie. So she took off to visit Audie for the rest of that time. I stayed there. We stayed at her house so we could let ours go. And I looked after, she had 2 boarders then, and I looked after them while Dad would go every day after work and help to build the house. So not the best of experiences for me carrying a 3rd baby and looking at, and Granny's house was this big staircase. The only bathroom was upstairs at the top of the stairs and not where you were working all day around the kitchen and all that.
and that was the house that Dad grew up in.
Yeah, that's the
so
house.
you talked about the
that-
big, like,
right.
many bedrooms. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she used to take boarders for her income because after Dad got married, she had her other son married just, I think, 2 months before we did, and flew the coop to the U.S. And then, it was after that when Jimmy was going to be born, Granny's sister. She owned a house with two sisters. And the sister who was in England told her she's not interested in the house. She never had to pay them rent or anything. But the one who was in Bermuda, her husband wanted to start a business, and they decided this was easy money for them if they could sell the house and use it for his needs. It was the three were sharing it. So then that's when we built on. Our house was already built on clay estates, and Jimmy was expected at the time, and we changed that initial garage into Granny's bedroom and added another garage and a big playroom because we could see our family growing by leaps and bounds.
Well, you're already waiting for number 4.
Yeah.
So now we're into 66, 67.
Well, we're not quite there yet. When Kevin was born in '66 at Christmas, November. And right after that, we moved to our new house on Clay Estates.
Okay, so was he born first?
He was born when we were at Granny's house.
While you were waiting?
Yeah. Wow. And then that Christmas, we moved in 2 weeks before Christmas, and I had everybody at my house for Christmas dinner. My mother and father, my cousins, and Granny all came to our house for Christmas dinner. I was really happy with that. Yeah, in the meantime, Tony and Liz had got married, and they had Anthony right after Kevin was born. So we had further family added.
Because it went Kevin, Anthony, Jimmy, Mark. Yeah. Then Tom?
Jimmy and then Tom. Tom was born
before Mark?
In Ohio.
Before Mark Cordero?
Mark Cordero, I'm not sure. I know Mark Cordero was in May, I think.
Somebody will correct us.
Yeah. Anyway,
all those guys were bunched together anyway, the 4 of them, right?
Yeah. So when we... when Jimmy was born in January 1st of 1968, Kevin was just barely a year and a month old.
Yeah, because in my mind I always say, everybody's 2 years apart except for Tommy.
Not,
But
it's between Kevin and Jimmy was a year, and we were going to our neighbors for a New Year's Eve party. And I said to Dad, I don't feel right. I've just got this backache. I don't feel like going. And he promised me we'd come home right as soon as everybody said Happy New Year at midnight. A neighbor that was close by, took 3 of them to drag him up the hill. And it was no longer midnight. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And dropped him into bed. And then I got up and my water had broken. And I said to him, look at this. He says, you wet your bed. Oh, brother. So I told him, go and call the doctor. I said go to the neighbor. We had a really nice American couple that lived near us. Go and ask them to use their phone because ours was out of order.
Oh.
So I said, go and use Mrs. Mabry's phone. I'm not going to somebody else's house and wake him at this hour of the morning. I said, well, go down to the phone booth then. We got to call the doctor. Can't find a dime in the whole place, or 6pence, whatever it was at that time, to put in the phone booth. Well, I finally found one. He gets down there and he dialed the wrong number.
Oh my gosh.
So he had to come back and use the neighbor's phone anyway. And when we got to the hospital...
How the heck did you get to the hospital?
Well, we called a taxi from the neighbor's...
I hope he didn't drive.
No, from the neighbor's house. And then when we got to the hospital, he was joking around. I was joking around saying maybe he's the one that needs the wheelchair. Oh yeah, this one is for him because he looked so bad. He was green in the face. They thought he was sick.
Oh my god.
So anyway,
I've
Jimmy.
never heard that story. That is
No?
awesome.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, yeah, that was the big thing. Yeah, come on, Michael. We said Happy New Year, yeah. He just, in those days, he just would really hang one on. So, but only on special occasions, yeah. So, anyway, Jimmy was the first baby, the first legitimate baby of the new year. He wasn't number one baby, but they didn't record unless it came from a married couple.
Oh wow.
Isn't that awful?
Wow.
Yeah, another person had been born
Times
earlier.
change.
Yeah. So he was born, and then he won a case of pet milk
Oh.
for being, and a free portrait taken at the studio where Uncle Tony used to work.
Oh.
But Harry Simons gave that as his gift to the first baby of the new year. It turned out to be Jimmy. So, so I don't know, how far are we? Do
I
I
don't know,
keep?
we just got the Kevin and
What?
Jimmy.
No, I mean as far as time goes.
Oh, we got lots of time.
Yeah. So I told you that Granny moved in, and
Yeah.
it was really after, not too long after she moved in, and we were there with Kevin and Jim, and then we had to go to Ohio because Dad was again going to have this big.
All right, because this is all really compact because
Yeah, because
Yeah.
now he's going back to Ohio for more training in Dayton. And so now he's going to Ohio with 4 babies and his wife and mother.
oh my.
So we went, and of course Auntie Angie and Louie lived and his sister Audie and Bob lived all around
were
the
they all in
Cincinnati
Cincinnati at that
area.
time?
Yeah. So we actually spent a couple of weeks with Angie and Louie while we hunted for an apartment closer to Dayton, which was in Centerville. And then,
So at that time, they were all in their houses that I remember.
yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we went to this apartment building, and we asked for a bottom apartment because I didn't want have to worry about babies running and all over people's heads. So it worked out nice, and we had a 3-bedroom apartment. Mark and Danny were in 1 bedroom. Kevin and Granny were in the other bedroom. And Jimmy was in our bedroom. We had the crib in our bedroom for Jimmy. And then, right after we had moved there, I found out I'm going to have another baby. I didn't know when we left Bermuda. So here I am expecting Tommy. And it was so funny because the doctor we went to, I said his name was Dr. Shirk. And he said, having the 5th baby, and you have all boys? Yes, I do. He says, well, you can't have another boy because I have 5 boys. You can't have 5 boys. Well, we showed him. We had our Tommy, and then his second name was Christopher, and I used to tell your cousins, yeah, it's Quitzifer. We're not having any more babies. So when Tommy came along, we had a little bassinet bed, and he was on top of the dresser in our bedroom because we had to keep him out of the way of Jimmy, who thought he was a rag doll.
Oh my gosh.
Jimmy turned 1 on May the 1st, and Tommy was born on June the.
January.
Oh, come on, January 1st, and Tommy was born January 8th, and Jimmy thought he was a little doll. He just we had to really watch Jimmy. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and if Tommy was ever lying on the floor, Jimmy would go, leg up, horsey. He was gonna ride that little boy. So
Boy.
anyway, we and then
Oh, yeah, the horsey stories.
that's where
Yeah,
that
that's
came
what I was
from.
about. So you've got everybody there. Why wouldn't Granny just go live with Audie or?
Oh no, she thought I needed the help. Bless her heart.
Well,
mean,
I imagine it was helpful.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
But my disposition is I would have much rather just been by myself as just me. And then at that time, when we lived in that apartment, there was no washer dryer. I used to have to go. There was a separate building that was the laundry, and you had to pay for the machines. But it was such a treat because, like, I could take 3 washers at a time and dry them all at one time. Then I'd be back home about an hour or so with all my laundry done, which spoiled me because when we went back to Bermuda, I demanded that dryer.
Yeah, because you're stringing up 5 babies
Well,
worth of.
Well,
Clothes
three
now.
three of them when we went back to Bermuda, 3 of them were in diapers. Kevin was still in night diapers.
Right.
He was okay during the day, but and then Jimmy and Tommy were just babies, and that was all cloth diapers.
So you found out you were pregnant with Tom when you got there. So when did you go there? Would have been like June or
I'm not
maybe
even
May
sure.
of.
Jimmy was maybe 6 months. Yeah,
Oh, okay, so
probably
maybe
June. Yeah.
So then you go from Bermuda. Now all of a sudden you've got 5 babies who've never had a winter jacket before.
Yeah.
So you got
Well,
to
no,
outfit us all.
it didn't.
Because it's
it-
Dayton, it's still pretty cold.
Yeah, but in at that point, like Jimmy and Tom, we didn't really do that much going out. You know, that they would be playing outdoors. They were too little. You know, but the others needed their winter stuff.
And then a little bit of culture shock too, because now all of a sudden like the roads are faster.
Oh
and
yeah, well
the-
that was me driving the car. When in between courses, Dad had to go back to Bermuda for a month
Oh.
because there was the way they were scheduled. Of course, the whole family isn't going to go back to Bermuda, so I had to learn how to get to the doctor, how to get to the grocery store, and how to get to church. And so this old clunker that we bought for $150 or $300 we bought it for. We had tarmac covering holes on the side of it, and it was just terrible. And anyway, I'm learning the car, and he took me on this country road, and I looked behind. I said, there's a lot of cars piled behind me. I'm used to driving in Bermuda 20 miles an hour, and there the highway was 50, and I'm doing 35. I think I'm a hot rodder doing 35. And I said, there's a lot of cars piled behind me, because it was just like a 2-way. It was not multiple lanes, and he says, "You don't worry about cars behind you. Just watch where you're going." So I did. All of a sudden, woo, woo, woo! Here comes a policeman. I said, "Oh no, a policeman's coming. Don't worry about the policeman. Just drive." Yeah, well, he pulled me over. I said, well, I'm just trying to learn the way and the use of the car. He says, ma'am, I've stopped lots of people from going too fast down this road, but I ain't never stopped nobody for going too slow. He says, right up the road there is a Sears parking lot. Pull in there and practice your car all day if you want. So he looked at my license, never even noticed that it was a Bermuda license, or if he did, he didn't care.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that. So every time I started to drive the car after that, Kevin would go, "Please come." Whoop, whoop.
Oh my goodness.
He thought that was good. He wasn't worried.
So how long after Tom was born before you moved back?
Well, we moved back when Tom would have been, let me see. Tom was born in January. Yeah, we moved back around, probably it was 6 or 8, 7, 8 months. I remember.
So you were there for a significant time, like
Yeah,
did
it was supposed to be for nearly a year.
Okay.
The courses that he had
So obviously
lined
you've
up.
built a whole new social structure there too. I don't
Yeah,
imagine you
well,
didn't
the
do anything.
People that I forgot to tell you, Mark was now in grade 1 or grade 2, going on to grade 2 in school.
Oh,
And
yeah, I guess he would be.
yeah, and he had his first communion there at St. Charles Church, which was also connected to St. Charles School. That's where he went. And he met this guy, and I don't remember if he was called Buster or Butchie, but he was a real bully. And he picked on Mark. And Mark came home and complained, "Oh, this guy pushed me around." And Dad said to him, "Well, the next time he comes near you and starts anything, you just punch him right in the nose." And next day, little did we know he was going to take that advice to heart. The next day he comes, and the poor kid just looked at him and he punched him right in the nose. But guess what? They became great friends after that. So anytime Mark was missing, I knew where to go find him in this kid's house.
That's funny.
So, and then we made friends with the Woldarziks, who became Tommy's godparents, and they left the complex before we did, but she still lives in New Hampshire. Her husband died quite a while back, but. We met a lot of, the people who lived around us, because I'm always one to go and talk to people. My first Tupperware party was in Ohio, in Centerville, in that apartment complex. I'd never heard of Tupperware. Wow, you'd think I was a magnet. They all wanted me to come to their party. My first lettuce keeper. And that stuff was really good in Bermuda because of the weather. It was really good. So, and we had, I was telling you, the Woldarziks were Tommy's godparents. In Bermuda, Jimmy's godparents were the ones in whose house Dad got drunk, the Funkies.
Okay.
They're both passed now. Kevin's godparents were Norman and Alda. And Danny's godparents also were Norman and Alda, but Mark's were Esther and Tony, my brother and sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The New Year's in Bermuda after Tommy was born, we all spent the day at the beach.
Oh, yeah.
Got all these pictures of Tommy and just a year old and everybody else running around the beach. It was the only place to go where you didn't mind the noise. We always partied New Year's Eve. And then if we were outdoors, the noise just carried.
Yeah. So that's, would that become more of a traditional place for you just to kind of get away? Take us to the beach?
Yeah.
Maybe not so much me, because I
No,
wasn't around much.
You weren't there yet.
In Bermuda.
Yeah.
But But yeah,
I
like this
was
is all
gonna-
right around that time now where Uncle Tony's got that picture of you guys running to church, right? Or
Yeah,
like trying to get
but
across the road.
I have to tell you, this still in Ohio. We were on the deck of the swimming pool. The complex had a swimming pool, and Jimmy was just about a year and a half. He's climbing on and off my chair. I'm sitting on the deck chair. All of a sudden, he went off the edge of the chair and fell smack on his face, and the blood was pouring from his mouth. I didn't know what to do, but Eleanor, who was Tommy's godmother eventually, she called 911, and police car came by because she didn't have her car. She couldn't take me anywhere. And the emergency police car came by and picked me up and Jimmy to go to the hospital because as soon as I don't know if he wasn't a paramedic, but I guess they have their training. As soon as he looked in Jimmy's mouth, he says, oh, he's going to need stitches. His teeth had gone right into his lip. And then as we're getting into the police car, Mark is at our window yelling, she's not arrested! She's not arrested!
He's covering for you.
Because Granny was there with the rest of them, and I took off. And then, she's not arrested!
Oh my gosh.
And then
That's too funny.
we just went into the emergency and they gave him the stitches, but oh, that was so horrifying when he's crying his little head off, and and I couldn't go in with him. They wouldn't let me go in. So anyway, got over that one.
That's the hardest thing when your kids are hurt like that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when Jesse got smushed on the
On the ice,
that was
yeah,
tough.
yeah.
Yeah, because you can't. I mean, she wasn't even really at that age where she could explain anything
No,
to you either,
that's
right?
when
just in, like,
Jimmy had
yeah.
no idea what was going on except that he hurt. Yeah, and all these strangers are carrying him on the gurney into the room back there. But yeah,
So on the beach, so
Yeah.
you're back in Bermuda on the beach
Yeah.
on New Year's Day. Is that the infamous barbecue, or is that just another one of many
oh,
barbecues?
where Kevin
Yeah.
has no.
Well,
That was one of the barbecues. Kevin, you could always count on him to eat whatever you put in his hand. This was one of the times I met Dad after work.
but this all came from like no matter what he'd ask for more, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, he always said more. When we were this is where it started, was in Uncle Louie's house, because Uncle Louie just loved the fact he would go. He was the one in the high chair then, and then he would get off the high chair. He finished his food immediately. Never had to coax him to eat. He ate everything you gave him. Then he'd get off the chair, and then he'd go stand beside somebody at the table and say, more some, and open his mouth. He wants more food. And then he'd go to the next person, more some, open his mouth. And Uncle Louie said to him, Kevin, where are you putting all this? He said, in my mouth.
So he would literally eat anything you gave him.
Oh yeah, just anything. But it was a few years later. We were on the beach, and I'd go meet Grandpa after work. He would come home and meet us at the beach. In the meantime, I had the hibachi and all the fixings to make hamburgers to eat at the beach, and I had them all counted. Exactly the number. For some reason, that's all I could stretch the meat to be, exactly the number that everybody would eat. And one dropped on the sand as I was going to go and put it on the hibachi. I thought, oh no, that sand sticks, like especially Shelley Bay where we were, it just stuck to everything. Never get it off the meat, but I tried. I went to the ocean and swished it around, tried to get as much of the sand off as I could. finished cooking the hamburger. Actually, it was cooked when I took it off and dropped it. And so I could swish it. If it had been raw, I wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah.
And then I came back, put it back on, warmed it up a little bit, gave it to Kevin. And he's sitting there eating. I kept looking at him. He's still eating. When he finally finished, he had the last piece in his mouth. He goes, "Hey, that had sand in it." I just gave him a big hug. Yes, it did, sweetheart.
Oh, boy.
So I don't know. He got a treat extra for that, but probably chocolate chip cookies, because at the time I used to turn out chocolate chip cookies by the dozens and the dozens.
Oh, man.
One of our neighbors, one of our friends came to visit, and they were coming up the hill at Clay Estates. And in the stillness of mid-afternoon, they could hear my voice yelling, "You are not to touch these cookies until I have them all out of the oven." Because I would take out a pan and it would disappear before I take out the next one.
And so started our healthy relationship with food.
That's right.
Oh, my
Chocolate
goodness.
chip cookies. Well,
Oh, wow.
to
Well, that was-
stretch that budget, I used to use half the chocolate chips that the recipe called for.
Oh, my goodness.
I think we should
Wow.
save the rest for another
Yeah, I think
time.
there's more. I think we was
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun, that one. I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, we still have to hear about Tupidural and
Yes.
all these other stories that we
Yeah.
gotta get down. But
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. So,
Actually, I should have put in Tupidural before we moved,
we can
moved
come
out
back.
of Clay Estates.
Oh, we'll
yeah.
come back to that. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we gotta keep them wanting more, Mom. Keep them wanting more.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
We'll tell you about Tupidural next time.
Okay.
That's Danny.
On that note,
Ta mengens de skize.
okay. Bye. See ya.
Bye, see ya.
Well, thanks for listening to Stories with Vavo. We hope you're enjoying this, and we'll hopefully get back at it next week and get another episode down for everybody to listen to as we grow our family and hear more stories about these crazy kids.
Okay.
All right. See you next time.
Is this correct?